What if I told you that America's grand gateways, airports once roaring with life, are now echoing with silence? Imagine terminals where laughter once filled the air, now replaced by the low hum of empty escalators. From coast to coast, airports that symbolized America's pride are now shadows of their former selves. International tourists aren't coming. Even Americans are skipping flights. But why is this happening? Is it safety, money, or something deeper about how the world sees the United States? Stay tuned, because the last airport on this list was once the world's favorite. Now, it's called the scariest. Number 9. Las Vegas. The desert mirage has faded. It's almost unthinkable. Las Vegas, a city built on neon dreams, now has an airport that feels like a mirage fading in the desert sun. Harry Reid International Airport, once buzzing with more than 4 million international visitors per month, has seen arrivals collapse to just 1.5 million in 2025, a 62% plunge compared to 2019. For a city that thrives on weddings, conventions, and parties every single night, this drop is devastating. The hotel workers feel it first. A receptionist on the Strip recalled when Chinese, Korean, and Australian tourists filled the lobby with noise, laughter, and lines that stretched for hours. Today, she says the loudest sound is the hum of the air conditioner. That emptiness isn't just physical, it's economic. Fewer guests mean shuttered hotel floors, empty casinos, and staff cutbacks across resorts that once never slept. Why the sharp decline? For international travelers, the U.S. is no longer the easiest or safest option. Lengthy visa processes, intense security checks, and rising costs make Europe or Asia more attractive. A young traveler from Singapore put it bluntly, "I prefer Europe. It's easier to get around, safer, and I don't feel scrutinized when entering." That sentiment is echoed across Asia, where tours to the U.S. have dropped nearly 46% in just 2 years. Even luxury hotel bookings by international guests in Las Vegas have fallen by more than 50%. The fallout is already visible. 3 major Asian airlines, once eager to serve Vegas, have completely pulled their direct flights to the city. For the first time in decades, rivals like Tokyo, Paris, and Seoul now feel more accessible and more welcoming than Sin City. Las Vegas was supposed to be the global entertainment capital. If even this neon icon is turning into a quiet desert, what does that say about America's broader appeal? And if Vegas can't hold on, what about the airports in America's heartland that once symbolized connection itself? One of them, Chicago O'Hare, may shock you with how far it's fallen. Number 8. Chicago O'Hare, the gateway that lost its confidence. Picture this: 4 international gates at one of America's busiest airports, standing dark and locked, not because of weather, not because of strikes, but because there simply aren't enough passengers to justify opening them. This is the new reality at Chicago O'Hare International Airport, once the second busiest hub in the entire United States. By April 2025, direct flights from Frankfurt, Seoul, and even Toronto, once core connections, had been slashed almost entirely, with no clear timeline for return. The numbers are staggering. International traffic has plunged by over 55% compared to 2019, a collapse that has gutted not just the airport, but the entire local economy. Duty-free shops are shuttered, restaurants have gone dark, and travelers who once rushed through O'Hare's bustling walkways now find themselves surrounded by dim light, empty rows of seats, and the echo of pre-recorded announcements bouncing across deserted concourses. What was once a gateway to the world now feels like a waiting room for a flight that may never board. Why has Chicago lost its pull? The answer runs deeper than airfare. Since the unrest of 2020, the city has been branded, fairly or not, as unsafe. International news outlets beamed images of protests, brazen daytime robberies, and violent crime into living rooms across Europe and Asia. And those images stuck. For travelers planning their once-in-a-lifetime American trip, safety isn't negotiable. As one German tour operator admitted, My groups now choose Boston or Seattle instead. Chicago no longer feels secure. The fallout ripples far beyond the terminal. A tour coordinator at O'Hare, once responsible for welcoming groups from Germany, South Korea, and Brazil every week, says her schedule has been completely empty in 2025. Half of her team has already been laid off. Her words sting. It seems like Chicago has lost its position, and we in tourism are the first casualties. It raises a chilling question. If the third largest city in America, with its iconic skyline and cultural heritage, can't convince the world to land here, what does that mean for smaller tourist hubs that depend entirely on foreign arrivals? Because in Orlando, the supposed happiest airport on Earth, the silence is even more heartbreaking. Number 7. Orlando, the Magic Kingdom with no visitors. There was a time when Orlando International Airport was the gateway to pure magic. Families dragging Mickey-shaped balloons, kids in wizard robes shouting about Harry Potter, and parents beaming as their children lived out once-in-a-lifetime dreams. But in 2025, the arrival halls at MCO feel more like abandoned movie sets than the opening scene of a dream vacation. Immigration counters sit idle. Taxis line up with no passengers. Hotels around the airport hover at barely 35% occupancy, a devastating number for what was once the beating heart of America's family tourism industry. The problem isn't the destinations themselves. Disney and Universal haven't lost their sparkle. It's the wall America has built around its own magic. For international visitors, the barriers are exhausting. Skyrocketing airfare, surging hotel prices, and the biggest frustration of all, visas. Families in Canada who once made Orlando their second home now face 4-month wait times for U.S. tourist visas. Compare that to Japan or South Korea, where travelers can secure an e-visa in just days. One Vancouver family told us bluntly, "We'd rather go to Tokyo Disney. It's cheaper, easier, and we don't feel like we're being punished just for visiting." The numbers back up this sentiment. According to a 2025 survey by the Family Travel Association, only 1 in 5 Canadian parents said they plan to bring their children to the U.S. in the next 3 years. Just 6 years ago, it was 4 out of 5. That collapse isn't a blip, it's a tectonic shift in family travel trends, and the impact is brutal. Universal Studios, for the first time in 2 decades, reported a summer operating loss. Not even the 2008 financial crisis managed to derail Orlando's theme park juggernaut. But now, entire vacation packages are being canceled before the first suitcase is even packed. What's happening in Orlando is symbolic of America's wider tourism decline. The country still has world-class attractions, but the experience of getting here, expensive tickets, strict security, unfriendly immigration, makes the magic feel out of reach. Every empty hotel room is a lost paycheck for housekeepers, shuttle drivers, and small restaurant owners who depended on the annual summer rush. And here's the haunting truth. When kids stop dreaming about Mickey, when parents stop saving for that one big Florida trip, America loses more than tourism revenue. It loses cultural influence, family traditions, and a piece of its identity as the land of fun. If Orlando, the happiest place on Earth, is half empty, what chance does a struggling city like Detroit have, where even the local economy itself has stopped believing in a comeback? Number 6. Detroit, the airport where hope ran out. Walk through Detroit Metro Airport today, and it feels like someone hit the pause button on an entire city. Gates stand open, but not to welcome streams of passengers, only to reveal rows of empty chairs and sparsely updated flight boards. The buzz of trade fairs, auto expos, and international delegations has been replaced by a quiet so heavy that even the hum of fluorescent lights feels loud. For a city that once symbolized American resilience, Detroit's DTW has seen international passenger numbers collapse by nearly 59% compared to pre-pandemic levels. Back in 2019, Uber drivers practically lived at the airport, cycling through 8 to 10 rides a day. Now, as one driver confessed, He might get a single trip, and often it's just to drop someone off who's leaving the country for good. The airport that was supposed to anchor Detroit's revival is instead becoming a mirror of its old wounds. Industrial collapse, population loss, and now a tourism industry that feels abandoned. The tragedy isn't just about fewer flights. Major airlines have cut direct international routes to Detroit, forcing connections through New York, Boston, or Toronto. That makes Detroit a second-choice destination, draining not just visitors but investor confidence. Conferences that once booked entire hotels now skip the city entirely because flying in is no longer convenient. And when an airport slips from the global network, so does the local economy. Hotels lose bookings, restaurants lose diners, shuttle services sit idle. Even logistics companies see contracts disappear because freight once tied to passenger traffic finds other routes. What makes Detroit's case especially painful is the loss of hope. Other cities with empty airports are at least fighting to rebrand or lure tourists back. Detroit, burdened by debt, safety concerns, and limited federal support, feels stuck in neutral. The airport's emptiness is not just about tourism decline. It's about a region that has struggled to convince the world, and even itself, that its comeback is real. Perhaps the hardest truth: people have stopped waiting for Detroit's return. When the very symbol of arrival and connection becomes a space of departure and resignation, it raises a question that no one wants to answer. Can a city that lost its factories also lose its last chance at revival? And if Detroit, once America's industrial heart, is being quietly erased from the international map, what happens in a city like New Orleans, where culture and music were supposed to be its eternal draw, but even jazz can't fill an empty terminal anymore? Number 5. New Orleans, when even jazz can't bring them back. At Louis Armstrong International Airport, you can still hear faint saxophones drifting through the halls, a nod to the city's legacy as the birthplace of jazz. But here's the tragedy. The music now plays to empty seats. Performances once designed to greet arriving travelers have been canceled, not because the bands stopped playing, but because there are no audiences left to listen. International passenger traffic through MSY has collapsed by more than 62% in just 1 year, leaving the airport eerily quiet for a city once synonymous with life, rhythm, and celebration. Flights that once linked New Orleans to Paris, Rome, and Mexico City are now sparsely filled or suspended. This is more than just a travel issue, it's a cultural wound. The French, Italians, and Latin Americans who once flocked here to taste Creole cuisine, dance in Mardi Gras parades, and soak in the soulful nightlife are vanishing. Without them, the very cosmopolitan fabric of New Orleans feels thinner, more fragile. The culprits are as layered as the city's famous gumbo. Tourism taxes, mandatory health insurance for foreign travelers, and relentless hurricanes that disrupt not just flights but confidence. Add to that the rising costs of visiting the U.S., from expensive airfare to burdensome visa procedures, and it's no wonder that international tourists are choosing Lisbon, Mexico City, or Bangkok instead. Why pay more for fewer smiles and more rules? This has dire consequences for locals. Hotels once filled year-round now operate at dangerously low occupancy. Musicians, bartenders, and small business owners who depend on festival crowds face shrinking incomes. Every empty seat on a canceled flight means another missed paycheck somewhere in the city. For New Orleans, culture is not just art, it's the economy. And when culture is no longer drawing crowds, the spiral accelerates. But perhaps the most painful question is this: if even New Orleans, a city whose identity is built on music, food, and resilience, can't hold on to its global audience, what does that mean for America's cultural soft power? When the Big Easy starts feeling hard to reach, maybe the world is telling us something we don't want to hear. And if jazz can't fill the silence at New Orleans Airport, what about Denver, once the busiest inland hub in America, where even domestic flights are vanishing because Americans themselves would rather vacation overseas? Number 4. Denver, the hub where Americans don't fly anymore. Denver International Airport was once America's crossroads. The vast, tent-like roof symbolized openness, connection, and possibility. Planes crisscrossed east to west, north to south, with 70 million passengers a year passing through, a number that made it one of the busiest hubs in the world. But step inside Den in 2025, and you'll find boarding gates deserted, check-in counters eerily quiet, and suitcases rolling across cold tiles with no real urgency. In just the first half of 2025, more than 400 domestic flights were cut, a shocking figure for a city once celebrated as the heart of America's air network. Why the cuts? The painful answer is that flying inside America has simply become too expensive for its own people. A mother from nearby Aurora, Colorado summed it up. "I wanted to take my son to Florida to see his grandmother, but the ticket was nearly $900 round trip. I had to give up domestic flights, once considered affordable and routine, are now a luxury purchase. And here's the irony. While Americans stay home, they're flying abroad in record numbers. Data from Booking.com shows overseas tours by Americans rose 37%, while domestic trips fell 18%. Why? Because in 2025, a family can fly to Portugal for less than flying to California. A Greek dinner costs less than lunch in Miami. And perhaps most importantly, travelers say they feel more welcomed abroad than at home. This reversal has profound consequences. Denver was designed as a connector, families reuniting across states, businesses linking coasts, cultures blending in the middle. Now, that role is evaporating. The hub is losing not just flights, but its symbolic function of uniting America itself. If the people who live here no longer find it affordable or welcoming to fly across their own country, what happens to the idea of the American dream road trip reimagined by air? The emptiness of Denver International doesn't just signal fewer vacations. It signals a fraying national fabric. When Americans stop visiting each other, they stop connecting with each other. The decline of domestic air travel is more than a travel statistic. It's a story about distance, not just in miles, but in culture, empathy, and understanding. And if Denver, America's own inland hub, is hollowing out, then the situation in Honolulu is even more heartbreaking. Because Hawaii wasn't just a domestic getaway, it was the dream destination for an entire generation of Asian travelers. Until now. Number 3. Honolulu, paradise without visitors. For decades, Honolulu International Airport was the portal to a dream. Turquoise waves, golden sunsets, and Hawaiian hospitality that defined paradise for millions. But in 2025, that postcard image is fading fast. Walk through HNL today, and the silence is startling. Duty-free shops sit shuttered. 40 food stalls have closed, and once busy terminals feel like abandoned movie sets. The most painful collapse is from Japan, once Hawaii's most loyal tourism market. Before the pandemic, Japanese visitors accounted for over 60% of Hawaii's international arrivals. By 2025, that number has plunged by 81% compared to 2019. Flights from Tokyo, Osaka, and Sapporo are reduced or suspended, leaving entire gates dark. A Japanese employee who has worked at the airport since 1998 shared, "I used to sell to hundreds of Japanese customers every day. Now, I might see a handful all week, and I'm lucky. Many of my coworkers have already been laid off. The economic fallout is brutal." Generations of Hawaiians who relied on tourism, from hotel staff to tour operators, are facing unprecedented uncertainty. For a state where service industries are the backbone, the loss of visitors isn't just numbers on a chart. It's groceries not bought, mortgages unpaid, and families pushed to the edge. But behind the collapse lies something deeper, a cultural shift. On Japanese and Korean social media, a boycott America trend has been spreading quietly. Young travelers are openly declaring, "Why go to the U.S.? It's unfriendly, unsafe, and too expensive." Add Washington's foreign policy tensions, trade disputes, and images of unrest, and suddenly paradise feels politicized. For many Asian tourists, it's easier to choose Bali, Seoul, or Okinawa instead. Destinations that feel cheaper, closer, and safer. The tragedy is that Hawaii, though geographically distant, is inseparable from the U.S. Its economy is shaped by Washington's decisions, but its people bear the consequences. Locals never asked for trade wars or stricter visa hurdles, yet they're the ones paying the price as planes stop landing. And here's the haunting question. If Hawaii, the symbol of America's tropical allure, can no longer convince visitors it's worth the journey, then what does that mean for mainland gateways? In San Francisco, the problem isn't paradise lost. It's a city that has become a global tech icon, but whose airport now feels abandoned because the city outside its walls has become too unsafe to face. Number 2. San Francisco, the tech capital no one wants to land in. Once upon a time, San Francisco International Airport symbolized innovation and global reach. This was the city of startups, venture capital, and the Golden Gate, a place where airlines competed fiercely for direct routes into Silicon Valley's backyard. But in 2025, the departure boards at SFO tell a different story. In just the first quarter, 6 international airlines withdrew entirely. Lufthansa, ANA, Air China, Scandinavian Airlines, and more. The result? A loss of over 800,000 international passengers year over year, leaving terminals that once hummed with optimism now eerily still. Why? The problem isn't the airport itself, it's the city outside its walls. Travelers stepping out of SFO are confronted with what international headlines have branded San Francisco's urban decay. Sprawling tent encampments, open-air drug use, and luxury shops boarded up after repeated smash-and-grab thefts. A Canadian tourist put it bluntly, "I used to dream of visiting San Francisco. Now, every time I land here, I feel uneasy." The image is devastating for a city that once marketed itself as progressive, innovative, and cosmopolitan. Even though San Francisco remains the headquarters of global tech giants, it lags behind in the basics: safety, cleanliness, and visitor experience. Airlines are pragmatic. They don't maintain routes where passengers don't want to go. And the truth is, for many Europeans and Asians, San Francisco has slid down the list of desirable destinations. Why gamble on SFO when Los Angeles, Vancouver, or even Tokyo feel safer and more inviting? The fallout extends beyond tourism. Conferences that once made San Francisco a magnet for global networking are increasingly shifting to Austin, Miami, or Seattle. Hotel bookings tied to business travel are drying up. Food courts inside the airport stand half-empty, staff laid off. Even Business Traveler U.S. downgraded SFO's ranking, citing not service quality, but the collapse of the city's appeal. It's a paradox. The richest city in America, powered by billion-dollar tech firms, is unable to protect the very airport that connects it to the world. If San Francisco can't even convince the world to land here, can it still call itself a global city? And that leads us to the final stop on this journey. Not the richest, not the busiest, but the airport that once symbolized America's very identity. Today, it ranks among the worst in traveler reviews, with chaos so bad that tourists say they'd rather never come back. That airport is Philadelphia. Number 1. Philadelphia, the birthplace of America, now the worst gateway. If there was ever an airport meant to embody American pride, it's Philadelphia International. This is the city of the Liberty Bell, Independence Hall, and the Declaration itself, the cradle of democracy. But in 2025, PHL has become a symbol of free fall. According to Travel IQ, it ranked among the bottom 5 U.S. airports for passenger experience this year, and the avalanche of complaints tells the story. One-star reviews on Google have surged by 300% in just 6 months. The scenes described by travelers are chaotic. Families sleeping on terminal floors because baggage carousels were broken for hours. Security lines so understaffed that it takes more than 3 hours to clear. Stranded passengers sharing horror stories of confusion, lost luggage, and staff who seem overwhelmed or absent. As one woman from Toronto vented, "I arrived midweek and had to wait over 3 hours to leave the airport. Everything is a mess, as if no one is in charge." Airlines are responding the only way they know how, by pulling out. American Airlines has already slashed multiple direct flights from Europe and the Caribbean to Philadelphia, cutting international arrivals by nearly 40% in just the first half of 2025. For foreign travelers, the choice is simple. Fly into New York or Washington, where the experience is at least manageable, rather than gamble on chaos in Philadelphia. But the reasons run deeper than poor staffing. Philadelphia has been hollowed out by reverse migration. Residents leaving the city, tax revenues collapsing, and infrastructure like the airport left to decay. When budgets are near zero, when mismanagement becomes the norm, an airport can't function as a global gateway. Instead, it becomes a cautionary tale. And that's the tragedy. If the birthplace of the United States, the city where America told the world it believed in freedom, dignity, and progress, cannot even maintain an airport that welcomes visitors with respect, what message does that send? For many, the decision is already made. Philadelphia is no longer a first stop in discovering America. It's a warning sign to stay away. So, here we are. From Las Vegas to Philadelphia, from paradise in Hawaii to the tech capital of San Francisco, America's airports are emptying out. Not just because of high costs or visas, but because the very idea of America as a dream destination is slipping. And until that trust is rebuilt, the seats will stay empty. And that's the chilling truth. America's airports aren't just losing passengers. They're losing faith. If travelers won't come, the dream of America itself risks shrinking. What do you think? Have you experienced these airports recently? Drop your story in the comments and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives.